Hey, how's it going? So there's been a recent announcement that the first Halo game, Halo Combat Evolved, is going to get a remake, Halo Campaign Evolved. And there's lots of people talking about various aspects of this, whether sprint should be included in the game, whether the art style is any good, whether the Forerunner structures should look like they've been spit-shined 5 seconds before the Master Chief shows up. But what I want to talk about is the Halo ring itself. Some people have mentioned that the Halo ring in the sky looks thicker than it did in the original Halo game, and slightly paradoxically, that makes the ring itself actually feel like it's a smaller structure. Like the terrain that you can see over there doesn't look like it's as far away as it does in the original Combat Evolved, or in a lot of the other Halo games. So the question occurred to me, if a Halo ring was a real structure that humans actually built, and you were standing on it and you were looking at the horizon, what would it actually look like? So to begin, a Halo ring is a type of ring world. A ring world is a type of structure that you see in science fiction sometimes. It's basically a gigantic ring that spins, and that spin causes centrifugal forces to push you into the surface of the ring. If you try and stand on the inner surface of it, the apparent forces that show up due to that spin push you into the surface of the ring. It's basically a type of artificial gravity that you could actually make work in real life. It's the same kind of centripetal forces that you feel on a carnival ride, just on a huge scale. Examples include Ringworld, the book, which has one of these things so big that it traces out what's normally the orbit of a planet, but it's like one continuous object encircling a star. There's also the Culture series, which has these as well, and both of those examples are bigger than Halo rings. Halo rings are only 10,000 kilometers in diameter, which I know is huge to us, but they're only kind of planetary scale versus Culture orbitals, which are millions of kilometers across, and Niven ring worlds, which are hundreds of millions of kilometers across. Halo rings are actually a slightly weird example because they're not just things to live on, they're actually intended as weapons in the story. There's a number of Halo rings scattered throughout the galaxy, and you kind of activate them and they do a big laser blast thing and wipe out all life in the galaxy. It's just their secondary function is to also have a surface to live on. And they're also a little bit weird in the sense that whilst they do spin, like canonically we know for a fact that the Halo rings spin, there's also like artificial gravity generators involved, which is purely a science fiction thing. There's no real analogous thing to that in reality outside of literally just either accelerating in a straight line or spinning in a circle, which is what this is doing. Those are the only two ways to make artificial gravity in real life. So Halo rings incorporate purely science fiction, fantasy, artificial gravity stuff, whilst simultaneously not actually having to do that. So I'm not sure what the reason is for that canonically, but when we're talking about it, we're going to assume that they are just rotating to create 1g of gravity. That may or may not be entirely canonical, but we want to know what this would actually look like if you really built one in reality. In the games, we just see a skybox. In video game design, a skybox is basically just like a spherical image. It's like a JPEG. It's sort of wrapped around the camera itself, and all the objects in the world are rendered in front of the skybox. So the skybox looks permanently, infinitely far away, at least until you deload the skybox and load in a new one. You could model like sky and clouds and stuff in 3D, but that's a lot more intensive on your computer than just basically showing an image. And the Halo rings are basically just painted on a skybox. So in terms of game design, it's come down to whatever the art department wanted to do. So they're designed to make the game look cool, but how realistic are they? Well, let's figure it out. I've made a full, correctly scaled model in SketchUp of a Halo ring. So the diameter is 10,000 kilometers, the width of the ring is 318 kilometers. We do also know the thickness of the rings, but what's more important than that is the height and thickness of the walls that hold the atmosphere in. And I couldn't find a totally conclusive number for this, at least not canonically. In terms of the physics of actually making this work, I think a sensible minimum would be maybe 50 kilometers. That still would leak some atmosphere. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would hold most of it in. You could also make this work a little bit better if there was some kind of, I don't know, some sort of plasma barrier or something. I'm not entirely sure how plausible that would be to do from a physics perspective, but some kind of barrier that you can fly into and out of, but doesn't let individual molecules get through. Anyway, I started with 50 kilometer walls, and it was already very apparent that this is not what the ring looks like when you stand on it in the game. So I decided to be real optimistic with the assumption that we can get some kind of plasma barrier thing to work, and I cut the wall height in half. So these walls are actually a little less than 25 kilometers tall. Now I made some stuff for scale just so you can get a feel for how big these rings actually are. So right in the middle here you can see central London. I put the Burj Khalifa next to it too. That's the biggest building in the world, so you can just get some sense for scale. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see this big quadrilateral. That's about the size of Greater London, which as far as I can tell is about 40 kilometers by 58 kilometers. Looming above the whole thing, I've included a really crap version of the Covenant supercarrier from Halo Reach. Good lord, it looks fucking awful. It's like an alien doorstop. There's also the Earth here for scale, and I've also made a scale model of my dong just in case you're interested. Try not to judge my SketchUp skills too much. SketchUp isn't really built to handle models which are 10 million meters across. Alright, now we've got a 3D model. I've set the field of of view in SketchUp to 90 degrees, and I've done the same for all of the Halo games, so this should just be a case of lining up the horizons and keeping the widths of the screen consistent, and then just kind of putting things on top of each other. If the screen looks a bit off-center at any point, that's just me putting the middle of the image in the right place, so whatever, it's fine. It should be an accurate measure of how things would actually look in the sky, so we can compare this model to what we can see in the games. So let's do it chronologically in terms of when the games came out. This is what you see in Halo Combat Evolved. First off, I really like the cool purplish colors. I like the sort of early 2000s chrome aesthetic. It reminds me of those Toonami intros. Those were cool. I know that people want that kind of aesthetic keeping in the remake, but the remake just looks like kind of bog standard photorealism, which is fine in a sense, because I guess they've got to try and unify the art style of Halo 1, 2, and 3 if they're going to keep doing remakes. But anyway, my point is that this looks really cool. Now, the Halo ring itself is pretty fat, and it's got a really accentuated sort of arcing shape, which makes it look kind of more dramatic than you would actually see in real life. Also, as you can see, the walls are visible, but they're really thin and slim. Points for at least having them there, though. Okay, what about Halo 2? I started off on this level of Halo 2, and you can't really see the Halo ring very well because there's too much cloud in the way, so I jumped onto this level, and my god, the color language of this skybox is fucking dreadful. If you averaged all the colors on screen right now, it would be the color of the diarrhea coming out of someone dying of the bubonic plague. Anyway, the shape here is pretty accentuated as well, like in Combat Evolved, although Halo 2's ring also seems higher up, if that makes sense, like it flares out quite high in the sky. I don't know, the shape just looks wrong to me. It's weird. Maybe it's the lighting or something? It makes the ring look not like a ring. It looks like a giant pyramid with a skin condition. It's fucking weird. Also, the walls are kind of hard to discern, again, maybe because of like the clouds and stuff. Overall, I think this gets fairly low marks from me. It doesn't look the best. Moving on to Halo 3, this is kind of a weird one, because in the game, you're only on this Halo ring very shortly after the ring has just been built, and you're firing it almost immediately, so it's blowing itself apart as you're doing the Warthog run to try and get off of it. Also, I walked off to the side of this level to try and get a good image of the ring, and there's a mongoose here. I never knew that was there. Okay, onto the actual Halo ring. The shape of the ring in Halo 3 is really weirdly accurate, although it is hard to discern exactly where the horizon's meant to be, so I guess there's a bit of wiggle room, but this one seems to line up pretty closely. That said, the retaining walls for the atmosphere are absolutely tiny. You can barely see them. You could chalk this up to the ring not being fully built yet, but you can see the walls. They're just like 2 kilometers tall, which is definitely not enough. But anyway, overall, I think it gets really high marks. It's the right size and shape. Now, Halo 3 ODST didn't have any rings in it, but Halo Reach kinda did. It was only in the Forge mode, which is like the level builder, because the actual campaign just took place on Planet Reach. But yeah, if you go into Forge World, the big sandbox level is apparently located on a Halo ring, and I always love the way this one looks. The scenery is just really pretty. There's like big clouds, big mountains, glassy lakes, pristine wilderness. If Combat Evolved does early 2000s chrome future very well, then this is sort of airy utopian future done very well. It's a very cool vibe. Anyway, as for the ring itself, I think this looks really pretty as a skybox. This is my favorite one. But they have positioned the ring too high in the sky again. I guess they're doing it in this case to make the ring visible above all the mountains. Like if they want majestic mountains and they want you to be able to see the ring, they've got to compromise something in terms of the realism. So yeah, not particularly realistic, but it does look beautiful. Also, something cool about this that we hadn't seen before, the ring maybe has some slightly sort of convex shape to it, and the character that you're playing as could be located closer to one edge of the ring than the other. Now, I replicated all of this on my model, right? I actually made the bottom of the inner surface of the ring curved, but the problem with this is that down, quote unquote, is caused by the rotation direction of the ring, which means that down is still the same direction whether you're over here or over here. So rather than the bit of the ring that you're stood on feeling flat and the ring being angled around you, you would actually just feel like you're climbing a big hill and the ring would still be directly up and down in relation to the way that you're perceiving gravity. There is a cool question about whether you'd actually do this though if you were really building a ring to live on. Like if you made it flat, it would be more practical, but curved would give the ring some more structural strength, and it would actually give more land area if you don't mind building up the side of what feels like a several kilometer tall mountain on either side, although the air would get thinner as you get higher. It's just kind of a trade-off that you're going to have to balance. Now let's move on to Halo Infinite. I know I'm skipping over Halo 4 and Halo 5. I never really played those games very much. I did play through each of them once with one of my friends on co-op, and that was enough, to be honest. I'm not really that invested in more story with Master Chief in it. To me, they're just coming up with more excuses to have the same protagonist go on galactic adventures, even though he already wrapped up the galactic adventure he was having. The guy already saved humanity. Why are we cooking up more bullshit for the same guy to do? Just show other characters doing stuff. It's fine. And what hurts Halo 4 and 5 to me even more is that all the characters look like fucking in Power Rangers, they look plasticky. I really miss the earlier art styles. This just looks like a pile of dog shit to me. But Halo Infinite kind of brought it round to a little bit closer to sort of Reach and Halo 3 kind of vibe. So I have played a little bit more of that. So I went into the Forge world of Halo Infinite and I took a picture of the ring there. And if you overlay this one with the ring from Halo Combat Evolved, the profile of the two is uncannily similar to each other. It's just this one has obviously significantly better graphics. So again, it's got this really accentuated curve for dramatic effect and walls which are visible but much smaller than they should be realistically. Now let's look at the footage that we have for Campaign Evolved. Now I've heard some Halo fans saying that the ring looks too big, and I agree, it looks too wide. Although the transition between the ring and the ground is actually pretty solid. It's one of the best we've seen. It really does look pretty natural, but yes, the overall width of the ring is too large. So they really should make the further away parts of the ring look smaller in the skybox. Although I am wondering if they're doing that on purpose, because they've also added what look like Forerunner structures that you can actually see on other parts of the ring. And if the angular diameter of the ring was actually accurate, maybe it would be small enough that you couldn't really see them. And for all I know, they could be kind of story relevant, given it's an actual remake and not just a remaster. Other elements do look quite nice though. And in fact, I actually quite like the way that they've made the clouds kind of, it's hard to explain, they're sort of long and kind of rise up around the ring a little bit. It's subtle, but it's there. And I wanted to finish this off by talking about what the weather and the climate would be like on a Halo ring, because it's really cool to think about. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this. Alright, thanks. Back to the video. And I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a meteorologist, so just take everything that I'm about to say and treat it as if a homeless person was shouting it at you on a subway. So in terms of what the weather would do, I think the climate would be pretty stable, because on the Earth you get different seasons and different weather in different places, largely because the Earth is curved and it has some tilt relative to the sun. So the surface area of the Earth near the poles gets a much thinner slither of the sunlight than the full face-on sunlight that you get at the equator. And over the course of the year, that angle changes, which gives the Earth the seasons that it has. On a ring, no place would be more or less angled towards the sun than anywhere else during its daytime, so the temperature would be pretty uniform across the entire surface of the ring, unless you explicitly made certain parts of the ring out of more or less reflective surfaces to try and amplify or minimize the heat that gets trapped in the atmosphere. And in terms of how the weather would work, this is the bit I'm actually really not sure about, because in my head, if you had a pocket of hot air, obviously it would rise, and then due to the Coriolis forces, which in this case would be happening vertically rather than like horizontally over the surface of the Earth, you'd have thermals pushing air up, and then the air would kind of move back spin before descending again when it cools down. That may be right or wrong, I'm not totally sure, but at least in my head that seems to make sense. Not sure if that would generate fairly high winds. You could potentially have one gigantic slipstream of air circling the ring, unless you have some very big mountains or baffles built into the ring specifically to slow it down. So I'm sure there'll be some interesting dynamics there. Also, if you get any storms, I have to imagine that the friction with the side walls of the ring would cause them to sort of roll along the sides of the ring. So I wouldn't be surprised if you got some pretty high wind speed but quite small hurricanes. That'd be pretty cool. Again though, I could be completely talking out of my arse. I actually don't know. It would be really cool if you're a meteorologist to weigh in on what you think would happen. In fact, if you're a meteorologist and a physicist, so you fully understand the whole problem, that would be fucking incredible. Tell me what you think would happen. I'm pretty sure if you do get like little hurricanes or cyclones or whatever, they would be pretty intense, because a 10,000 kilometer diameter Halo ring would only take an hour and 15 minutes to complete one full rotation if you're rotating it to match 1g of surface acceleration. So the Coriolis forces would be gigantically stronger than they are on the Earth. The Coriolis forces would be strong enough that if you tried to shoot a sniper rifle at a target in the upspin direction, and then you turned around and shot the same sniper rifle at a target that's exactly as far away as the other one but in the downspin direction, both shots would miss, and they'd miss in different ways if you didn't account for the spin, because each bullet is going to get deflected differently, literally just because you're shooting upspin or downspin in a rotating reference frame. It's really cool to think about. Anyway, I'd love to know what you think about all of this, because at least with reference to the weather, I am totally talking out of my arse. But in terms of what the ring looks like, I think Halo 3 gets my award for kind of vaguely closest to what it would actually sort of look like in terms of size and shape and location of the things in the sky. Although Halo Reach or Halo Infinite are probably closer in terms of the colors that you'd see. I mean, it would basically look like the Earth from space, but just kind of with a weird inverted horizon or whatever. You know what I mean. Anyway, alright, that'll do it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks as always to my elite Elite level supporters, Thunderbolt22A10, who tried to order a pizza to his house and accidentally ordered a Covenant supercarrier to Planet Reach, Nomad Greg, who used Mac rounds in atmosphere on his mother-in-law, Andrew Maul, who beat Master Chief in a hot dog eating contest, John Bejarano, who knows the Arbiter on a first-name basis, he just calls him the, JDK, whose internal monologue says splash-tacular every time he takes a shit, Mutantius Doom, who incorrectly mounted a slip space drive and caused a mild atrocity, Stormester Ritter, who flies pretty good for a brick, and thanks to all my other supporters too. Don't forget to join the Patreon or the channel membership if you want to be featured in my video credits or chat on Discord, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Over and out.